Over 2 millennia ago, a brilliant Chinese general and strategist named Sun Tzu wrote a treatise called The Art of War. This ancient text, though written in a time of swords and spears, contains such deep insights into human nature, conflict, and victory that it remains required reading in military academies and boardrooms to this day. At the heart of Sun Tzu's philosophy is a radical notion: the greatest generals win without ever stepping foot on the battlefield. They defeat their enemies through superior intelligence, strategy, and statecraft long before swords are drawn. In a world that often celebrates brute strength and aggression, Sun Tzu's ideas are more relevant and valuable than ever. His maxims light the way for anyone who wants to meet challenges and overcome opposition not just in literal warfare, but in business, politics, and everyday life. Sun Tzu shows us how to outthink and outmaneuver our adversaries so that by the time a conflict comes to blows, we have already won. What you're about to learn are not just the core principles of an ancient Chinese text. These are universal laws of strategy and leadership that have been pressure-tested over thousands of years on the bloody battlefields of history. Used properly, they will help you win negotiations, competitions, and conflicts of all kinds with less risk and effort. Ignored, they will leave you at the mercy of those who understand them. Your enemies may already be using Sun Tzu's wisdom against you. It's time to turn the tables. Know yourself, and know your enemy. If there is a first commandment in Sun Tzu's philosophy, it is this: if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Nothing is more important than developing a clear, objective understanding of your own strengths, weaknesses, and circumstances, and those of your opponent. You must become a dedicated student of the conflict at hand, learning everything you can about the disposition and motivations of your enemy, and comparing them to your own. Most people enter into battles and competitions with little real insight into themselves or their opponents, a kind of willful ignorance that Sun Tzu considers supremely dangerous. We must cultivate deep self-knowledge through merciless self-examination. What are our true capacities and skills? Where do we excel, and where do we struggle? At the same time, we need penetrating insights into our enemies. What drives and constrains them? Where are they powerful, and where are they weak? Only by developing superior knowledge and situational awareness can we outmaneuver those who stand in our way. This emphasis on knowledge and intelligence gathering extends far beyond the battlefield. Whether we're entering into a business deal, a legal battle, or a political campaign, the side with the best information tends to win. We should be relentless in accumulating data about our opponents while safeguarding information about ourselves. We need robust networks of scouts and spies, people on the inside and front lines who can feed us insights our enemies don't have. In the information age, power flows to those who can acquire, analyze, and act on knowledge the fastest. So while others remain complacent in ignorance, we must be tireless in pursuing a knowledge edge. The fate of kingdoms, companies, and careers so often comes down to who has superior information. Win before the battle begins. Imagine a general who conquers an enemy without a single casualty on either side, who takes territory and treasure without shedding a drop of blood. According to Sun Tzu, this isn't just a nice ideal, it is the ultimate aim of generalship and strategy. As he writes, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. Whenever possible, we should find ways to achieve our objectives and overcome opposition without direct confrontation or conflict. After all, fighting is inherently risky and costly, even when we win. The greatest strategists find ways to get what they want through clever positioning, unequal deals, and sheer intimidation, rather than open battle. In practice, this means we need to be thinking several moves ahead, laying the groundwork for victory well before the first shots are fired. In military campaigns, generals can achieve this by cutting off an enemy's supply lines, forming secret alliances, or maneuvering to control key terrain. In business and politics, we can lock up exclusive contracts, impose regulatory hurdles, or turn the public against our competitors all before they know what's happening. The goal is to put ourselves in such an advantageous position that our opponents have no choice but to capitulate without a fight. Their only options are surrender or certain defeat. It takes foresight, planning, and a relentless commitment to avoiding unnecessary battles. But when we can pull it off, winning without fighting is the purest form of victory. Avoid your enemy's strengths. Strike their weaknesses. Sun Tzu offers another powerful principle for securing victory with minimal fighting. Attack him where he is unprepared, appear where you are not expected. Put simply, we should avoid engaging our opponents where they are strongest, and instead seek out and target their points of vulnerability. This doesn't mean we shy away from conflict altogether, but that we are deliberate and strategic about choosing our battles. In warfare, a frontal assault against well-fortified defenses is likely to be bloody and ineffective. It's far better to find ways around those defenses, exploiting gaps to hit the enemy where they are disorganized and exposed. This principle applies just as readily off the battlefield. A small upstart company, for example, is foolish to challenge an industry titan by trying to match them dollar for dollar in marketing budgets or R&D spending. They have to find asymmetric advantages, targeting markets or innovations where the big player is weak and complacent. If you're an insurgent political candidate, you don't win by parroting the popular positions of the incumbent. You have to mobilize discontent and find issues where the establishment is out of touch and vulnerable. Winning as the underdog means fighting on your own terms, not the terms dictated by your more powerful opponent. What this really requires is mental agility and a willingness to adapt our strategies and tactics as conditions change. We can't get locked into a single plan of attack. Instead, we must assess the situation with clear eyes, looking for the path of least resistance to our objectives. Sun Tzu tells us that just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. As threats and opportunities evolve, so too must our approach. Sometimes that means a direct assault when we identify a sudden weakness. Other times it means an indirect, guerrilla-style harassment of our enemy's vulnerable flanks and rear areas. By refusing to attack strength head-on and maintaining the flexibility to exploit weakness as it appears, we can conserve our resources and optimize our chances of success. Deceive and disorient. One of Sun Tzu's most famous maxims is that all warfare is based on deception. This is not just a side note in his philosophy, it is a core pillar. The general who can deceive and disorient his opponents can make them act against their own interests and virtually defeat themselves. As Sun Tzu writes, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. The goal is to shape our enemy's perceptions and expectations, getting inside their minds to manipulate their decisions and actions. On the battlefield, this can take the form of surprise maneuvers, feigned retreats, or clever ruses that mask the true targets of our attacks. A small force that can convince a larger enemy that it is more powerful than it really is can win without superior numbers. A force that seems to be massing for an attack on the left flank can draw the enemy's strength away from the right, leaving it vulnerable for the real assault. The possibilities for deception in warfare are nearly endless, and the general who masters this dark art can shape the strategic landscape to his will. The applications for deception in other competitive arenas are just as potent. In business, a company can announce a decoy product to goad competitors into diverting resources in the wrong direction, or leak misinformation to confuse rivals about their strategy. Political candidates can bait opponents into unpopular positions through carefully crafted messages and attacks. In negotiations and conflicts of all kinds, a little well-timed bluffing and misdirection can tilt the scales decisively in our favor. The real trick is to seamlessly blend truth and fiction, concealing our deceptions within seemingly honest signals, so that our enemies can't discern what's real and what's fake. Of course, none of this is easy. It takes serious practice and skill to deceive convincingly, and there are risks if our trickery is uncovered. But as Sun Tzu argues, deception is such a powerful tool that we'd be foolish not to employ it. We have to think of it like a form of combat in its own right, a mental martial art, to misdirect and disorient our enemies into exposing vulnerabilities and making disastrous mistakes. Mastered properly, the way of deception can help us outfox and outmaneuver even the most formidable opponents. Timing is everything. In addition to his famous line about deception, Sun Tzu also left us with another oft-quoted gem. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. For the ancient general, victory was not just a matter of superior resources, tactics, or even information. It came down to timing, the ability to sense the precise moment, to attack for maximum impact, and act on it with speed and decisiveness. Time and time again throughout history, we see battles and competitions won or lost because one side seized a fleeting opportunity that the other side missed. A perfect strategy executed too late can fail, while an average strategy executed at the perfect moment can deal a devastating blow. The key to mastering strategic timing is twofold. First, we have to cultivate an almost Zen-like situational awareness, attuning ourselves to the subtle rhythms and ripples of conflict. This means opening our minds to signals of emerging vulnerabilities in our opponents, a drop in morale, a loss of key personnel, an overextension of resources. At the same time, we must sense the rising readiness of our own side to strike, detecting when our preparations have reached an apex of power that must be unleashed or else dissipate. It's a delicate art, requiring both razor-sharp insight and intuition. Second, we need to be building up our capabilities long before the critical moment arrives. Sun Tzu talks about the importance of logistical preparation, of stockpiling resources and advantageous positioning so that we can attack with overwhelming force on short notice. If we wait until we see the whites of our enemy's eyes to get ready, it will be too late. The best generals and competitors are always improving their readiness, running war games and drills, so that they can pounce with precision when the opportune time comes. This doesn't mean we can just wait passively for the right moment. As Sun Tzu writes, he will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. We have to be proactively shaping the strategic situation, setting the stage for momentous chances to appear. If we do that while honing our timing and readiness, we can deliver victorious knockout blows with uncanny regularity. We can sense the moment of maximum ripeness and pluck it before our foes even see it coming. The teachings of Sun Tzu are not just a collection of clever tricks for winning battles and besting opponents. They are a coherent strategic philosophy, an integrated approach to prevailing in a dangerous and competitive world without constantly fighting wars of attrition. By developing deep knowledge of conflict and human nature, by attacking weaknesses while avoiding strengths, by deceiving and disorienting our enemies, and by sensing the perfect moment to strike, we can maximize our impact while minimizing our exposure. We can defeat even the most daunting adversaries without massive risks and costs, clearing the path to our objectives. But while these principles are powerful, we shouldn't imagine that they are easy to execute. Sun Tzu's way takes serious commitment and practice to master. We have to be willing to invest in learning, in building our strategic acumen and insight to a level far beyond our rivals. We need to find safe ways to drill our deception skills and timing, whether through war games, business simulations, or real-world tests. And we must remain eternally adaptable and mentally agile, changing our approaches as circumstances demand. Most of all, we have to be patient. Sun Tzu tells us that no ruler should put troops into the field out of anger, and no general should fight a battle out of spite. The strategist's way is not one of constant aggression, but of calibrated restraint punctuated by decisive action. It requires us to see the long game, to wait like a coiled spring until everything aligns in our favor. In a world that urges us to act now, that takes real discipline and fortitude. But it is the key to conserving our strength and entering fights only when the odds are stacked for us. Imagine how different our companies, communities, and conflicts would look if more leaders operated by Sun Tzu's precepts. Imagine how much could be accomplished, and how much could be avoided if more people knew how to win without fighting. We have in our hands ancient principles, validated by the millennia, that can neutralize so many of today's challenges with minimal friction and destruction, if only we have the wisdom and forbearance to use them. That's the promise of Sun Tzu's teachings, not just victory, but a smarter, more efficient and adaptive way of engaging with human affairs. One that sees a path beyond eternal clashes of force and will, to a future where the real victors are those who can win hearts and minds without spilling blood. We may never eliminate conflict from the human story, but with Sun Tzu's insights, we can certainly learn to manage and resolve it far better than we do today. That ancient Chinese general, with all his talk of deception and swift strikes, may have left us the formula for a more peaceful world. How's that for a paradox?